It started as a whisper in the halls. A name scrawled in pencil across a rusted locker. A girl with hollow eyes and second-hand clothes, dragging her backpack like it weighed the world. They used to laugh at her, mock her, push her to the edge of tears just for sport. No one ever thought twice about the girl they called Maggot. But yesterday something changed. A black limousine parked in front of Blackridge High. The principal was called out. Then the teachers. Then a silence. And today they announced it. The school has a new owner. And she's been here before. Blackridge High had always been an unforgiving place. The kind of school where the rich kids reigned, and everyone else sank beneath the weight of their cruelty. It was built on old land, wrapped in ivy and rumors. People said the foundation had been laid atop a burned-down orphanage, though no one could prove it. The air always felt colder in its east wing, but no one paid attention to that kind of thing. Not when there were easier targets. Margot Sinclair had been one of them. She walked the halls in silence. Her clothes were too big, donated from the local church. Her hair hung like drapes across her face, unkempt and matted. And her voice, when she rarely spoke, was almost too soft to hear. Every day she sat alone at lunch. Every day she was shoved aside in the halls. Every day her books were knocked out of her arms. And every day the popular kids laughed. Especially them, the Crestwood Six. Sienna, Blake, Harper, Kai, Zoe and Drew. Beautiful, arrogant and cruel. They ruled the school like gods. If they didn't like you, no one else dared to. They gave Margot her nickname. Maggot. She's like something that crawled out of a dead body, Zoe once said, loud enough for the cafeteria to hear. Margot didn't cry. Not in front of them. She only stared. Like she was memorizing every face in that room. Nobody knew where she went after she disappeared sophomore year. Rumors circled. She dropped out. She ran away. She was institutionalized. The Crestwood Six liked to joke that she died of embarrassment. But 3 years later she came back. And this time she wasn't alone. The limo arrived before the morning bell. Jet black. Tinted windows. It sat outside the school gates for 5 long minutes before the driver emerged and whispered something to the security guard. Within minutes, the head principal, Ms. Devlin, was outside, nervously smoothing her blazer. Teachers followed. Whispers spread like wildfire. When Margot stepped out of the car, no one recognized her at first. Her hair was sleek, pinned behind her ears in a perfect raven black bun. Her clothes were sharp. Black blazer, tailored slacks, and gloves that hugged her hands like skin. Her eyes were no longer shy or downcast. They were glassy and unblinking. She didn't speak. She only handed the principal a folder. And that was it. By second period, it was announced. Blackridge High had been acquired by a private investor. The identity of the investor was confidential. But by lunch, everyone knew. Margot Sinclair was back. And she owned them all now. The first thing she changed was the security system. Then the hall monitors. Then the school bell tone, it no longer chimed. Groaned. Margot hadn't spoken to anyone yet. She hadn't walked into any classrooms. But she was watching. New cameras blinked in the corners of the halls. And no one could tell where they were pointed. Students whispered that the monitors in the front office now looped endlessly on footage of the old East Wing. The wing everyone avoided. The one with the temperature drop. The one that still smelled faintly of smoke. Then one by one, the Crestwood Six started to notice things. Sienna's locker wouldn't open. When it finally did, all her books had been shredded inside. Blake's football gear went missing. Then Harper's tires were slashed. Zoe came into the bathroom to find all the mirrors had been smashed, except the one that showed her face. Twisted and grinning back at her. Kai swore he saw Margot's reflection in a dark window across the quad. She was standing still. When someone takes everything from you, you don't always fight back with fists. Sometimes you wait. You disappear. You become invisible. And when you return, you don't knock on the front door. You own the whole house. Margot Sinclair didn't come back to forgive. She came back to collect. And now that she owns Blackridge High, every corner of the school has become her stage. And the Crestwood Six, their center spotlight. But the lights are dimming fast. 2 days after the announcement, the school held a mandatory assembly. No one knew why. The students whispered as they filed into the auditorium. Teachers looked pale. On stage stood Principal Devlin, clutching a microphone with white knuckles. Behind her, a large screen flickered on. It showed security footage. Grainy black and white. It was a recording of Sienna pushing Margot into a locker during their freshman year. The sound was cut, but everyone could see the laughter, the cruelty, the tears Margot tried to hide. And then another clip played. And another. Zoe, dumping a tray of spaghetti on Margot's head. Drew, tripping her in the hallway. Harper and Blake writing "Dirt Girl" in red marker across her locker. Each one exposed. The entire school sat in silence. No one looked at the stage. No one looked at the Crestwood Six. But everyone felt it, the shame, the tension, the truth. Principal Devlin's voice trembled as she announced the new school initiative, the Zero Tolerance Integrity Policy. Any act of bullying, harassment, or mockery, past or present, was now punishable by suspension, expulsion, or legal action. The rules had changed. And Margot was behind every one of them. After the assembly, the school was different. The Crestwood Six became the hunted. Hallways parted for them, not out of respect but fear. Whispers followed them wherever they went. Teachers stopped calling on them. Their lockers were moved to the basement level, far from the others. Their club privileges were revoked. Zoe's modeling photos, once proudly displayed in the front lobby, had been torn down. It didn't stop there. Sienna opened her locker one morning to find dozens of dead roses, blackened and brittle. Each one had a tiny note tied around the stem. I remember. Blake's football jersey, framed in the gym, had been replaced with a charred, unrecognizable version. Scrawled across the glass. You burned her too. The school's intercom system began glitching. During third period, it would crackle with faint static. Then a voice, barely audible, repeating the same phrase. She sees you. Students stopped going to the East Wing altogether. The whispers in the vents had grown louder. Someone claimed they saw handprints on the inside of the old maintenance room window, despite the door being locked and sealed for years. One afternoon, Harper didn't show up to fifth period. By sixth, her phone had been found in the girls' bathroom. The screen was cracked. The camera had been left on, filming the stall ceiling for 7 minutes. In the background of the video, something was breathing. Harper returned to school the next day, but she wouldn't speak. She wore long sleeves, even though it was warm. When asked what happened, she only whispered one word. Her. Drew was the first to break. He stood up in history class, pale and shaking, and demanded to speak to the principal. When asked why, he just muttered, "She's watching me sleep." He hadn't slept in 3 days. His mother told the school nurse he kept waking up screaming, clawing at his walls. He swore someone had been whispering in his closet. Home he found photos, old ones, taken years ago but now with something new in them. A shape in the background. A shadow behind his shoulder. A girl with stringy black hair and hollow eyes. He burned the photos. They came back the next day. But something was different. The girl was closer now. Smiling. Kai tried to get answers. He cornered Principal Devlin after class and demanded to know who really owned the school. She didn't answer. She only glanced up at the security camera in the hallway and said, "You should apologize. While you still can." That night, Kai sent Margot a message. A real apology. He didn't sleep either. Not because he was scared, but because he kept hearing something whispering his name beneath the floorboards. And somewhere in that darkness, Something answered back. In the final moments of the week, Margot finally spoke. It was during lunch. The cafeteria had gone eerily quiet. Then, through the overhead speaker system, her voice echoed across the room, clear, calm, and cold. "Do you remember what you said when I begged you to stop?" Long pause. "I do." And then, laughter. Not hers. But old recordings. Their jokes. Their insults. Their screams. Every single word they thought had disappeared. She had all of it. The room emptied fast. The Crestwood Six didn't eat that day. They didn't go to class. They huddled in the drama wing, surrounded by stage props and broken mirrors, too afraid to leave. But the school had changed. Its walls listened now. Its windows watched. And the girl they once called Maggot. She had made the school her body. And she wasn't done feeding it. There are places in every school that feel wrong. Blackridge High had one. The East Wing. Sealed off for over a decade. No one used it. No one cleaned it. No one asked why it stayed locked. Till now. Because Margot opened it. And the thing that lived behind those doors was finally awake. The nightmares grew worse. Each night, the Crestwood Six were haunted. Not just by memories but by something else. Something that wore Margot's face but moved like smoke. They would wake to scratch marks across their walls, wet footprints on their floors, and whispers that crawled into their ears like insects. Zoe started to sleep at school. She thought maybe it would be safer. Public. Right. But when she woke up in the nurse's office one morning, she found the windows blacked out with what looked like hair. Long black hair. Taped to every inch of glass. Sienna had stopped showing up altogether. Her parents said she refused to leave her room. She just sat on the floor, staring at the wall, rocking back and forth, whispering numbers. Room 304. Room 304. Room 304. That room didn't exist anymore. It was in the East Wing, condemned years ago. Blake, desperate for answers, convinced Kai and Drew to break in. They waited until the hallway lights dimmed after 7th period, then used a stolen janitor key to open the chain door. It groaned as it gave way. The hallway beyond smelled of mold and scorched wood. Every locker was rusted shut. The paint on the walls had bubbled and peeled, revealing charred wood underneath. The lights flickered once, and then stayed off. Blake turned on his phone flashlight. They walked in silence. A cold draft licked their skin. The air felt wrong, not stale but like something was breathing it in right behind them. They found room 304 at the end of the corridor. The number plate was melted. The door was blackened around the edges and nailed shut. Kai stepped forward to pry it open, but Drew stopped him. There was something behind that door. He could feel it. A weight in the air. Sound, almost like scratching. And then a voice. Faint. From inside the room. "Help me." The three of them bolted out of the wing, not daring to look back. They didn't see the figure that stepped into the hallway behind them. But the cameras did. And Margot made sure to replay the footage the next morning, looped silently on every screen in the computer lab. The silhouette. The flickering. The grin. That night, Blake dreamed of fire. He was standing in room 304. Alone. The walls were burning, but he wasn't afraid. Not until he looked down. His hands were covered in blood. Not his own. Then he heard it again. Voice. "You let me burn." He woke up gasping. The smell of smoke still in his nose. The palms of his hands blistered with red welts. And on his ceiling, something had been scratched into the plaster. "You laughed." The school began to rot. Literally. Mold spread across the lockers. The fire alarm would trigger at 3:04 a.m. every night, even when no one was inside. Teachers started calling in sick. One janitor quit on the spot, muttering something about the walls breathing. Kai returned to the East Wing alone. He needed to know what happened in room 304. What happened to Margot? And why this school felt like it was remembering everything. He brought a flashlight and his phone. He pushed open the door again. But this time it wasn't nailed shut. Inside the room was scorched. The air thick with ash. Broken desks warped by heat lined the back wall. And on the far side of the room, almost buried beneath a collapsed beam, was a desk. Margot's name carved into it. But it wasn't alone. There were others. Dozens of them. All carved into the blackened wood. Students who had vanished. Or died. And in the middle of the floor, drawn in what looked like chalk or bone dust, was a massive symbol. A circle of twisted shapes and letters in a language Kai didn't recognize. He took a step closer. And the door slammed shut behind him. He screamed. But no one heard him. Except the thing that lived there. When he was found the next morning, he was curled up beneath the desk, rocking back and forth, whispering the same thing over and over. She made a deal. She made a deal. She made a deal. Zoe watched from the hallway as they took Kai away. And that night, she received a text from an unknown number. Video. Grainy. Black and white. It showed her years ago, laughing while Margot cried. Pouring soda over her backpack. Shoving her to the floor. But the video wasn't taken from the security cameras. It was from Margot's perspective. And the final frame showed Zoe's face. Smiling. Before it melted. They thought Margot was the curse. But she wasn't. She was the vessel. She didn't just buy the school. She opened it like a gate. And something crawled through. Now Blackridge High is changing. The walls breathe. The halls hum. The clocks run backward in the East Wing. And the dead are remembering how they died. Zoe stopped coming to school. At least physically. Her phone, however, never rested. Every night a new video arrived. Clips from years ago. Some she remembered. Some she didn't. All of them showed moments when she laughed at Margot. Pushed her. Ignored her cries. Joined the others. But in each video, Margot's face looked slightly different than it had in real life. Her eyes darker, her mouth wider, as if something else was already watching through her. On the fourth night, the video didn't show Margot at all. It showed Zoe, asleep in her room. And someone standing at the foot of her bed. Blake tried to fight it. He brought Sage to school. Process. A bottle of holy water he got from his grandmother. He lasted 4 hours. By lunch, he was screaming in the library, clawing at the carpet, swearing the books were whispering his name. When staff finally pulled him away, he kept repeating the phrase, "Under the floor, under the floor. That's where it lives." They sent him home. He was never seen again. But the next day, a new hole was found in the East Wing's foundation. Something had clawed its way up. And there were scratch marks inside the locker next to room 304. Zoe, desperate, went to visit Kai in the hospital. He was no longer speaking in full sentences. His eyes were blank. His fingers twitching in patterns like he was writing invisible words in the air. But when she said Margot's name, he spoke. Just once. She's not alone down there. At Blackridge's local archives, Zoe found the original blueprints of the school. And she found something else. Before it was Blackridge High. The land held the Arkmore Institute for Troubled Girls. A cruel reformatory orphanage from the early 1900s. Shut down in 1928 after a fire killed 17 girls. Burned alive in the locked East Wing during a ritual meant to cleanse their sins. The only survivor. A girl named Marla Sinclair. Zoe's blood ran cold. Margot was a descendant. And the fire that once tried to silence the victims now burned in their namesake's veins. The Sinclair bloodline had returned to finish what the flames never could. Meanwhile, Drew had been digging on his own. He found the school's electrical schematics didn't match reality. Several of the vents led nowhere. Cameras had blind spots, intentional ones. And behind one of the boiler rooms, he found a sealed hatch. It reeked of sulfur, and something inside was moving. He didn't tell anyone what he saw that night. But his journal told the story later. She made the school her altar. Every torment they gave her, she fed it to the thing beneath. It grows stronger with suffering. And now, it's starving less. Friday arrived. The school was half empty. Parents pulled their kids out. Teachers called in permanently. The principal hadn't been seen since she went into the East Wing 2 days prior. Then Margot returned. Not through the front doors, but through the PA system. "Tonight," she said, "the doors will lock. Attendance will be mandatory." A deep hum began vibrating through the floor. At exactly 3:04 a.m., every phone in the building rang at once. It wasn't a number. It was a video. Faded. It showed the girls from the Arkmore Institute, standing in a burning hallway, screaming, as the East Wing collapsed around them. And in the flames, a door opened. Not to heaven. Not even to hell. To something older. And behind it something watched. The next morning the school stood silent. But above the front entrance, something new had been carved into the stone in soot and ash. 6 must pay for 6. The Crestwood 6. 1 was missing. 1 was hospitalized. 2 had vanished. And 2 remained. Zoe and Sienna. And time was running out. Because Margot didn't just want revenge. She wanted atonement. And blood was the only currency this school now accepted. You can run from guilt. You can drown out the screams. You can forget the faces of the people you've hurt. But when the place you called home becomes the thing that judges you, there's nowhere left to hide. Because Blackridge High isn't just haunted, it's alive. And Margot Sinclair is no longer its victim. She is its voice. And tonight, the final bell rings. It started at 3:04 a.m. The locks on every exit slammed shut with a thunderous clang. CCTV monitors across the school flickered to life, showing empty hallways, until one by one they revealed movement. Figures. Dark shapes. Not alive. Not anymore. The girls from the Arkmore fire. Screaming silently through the screens, their charred outlines pacing the East Wing. Their mouths moved. Over and over. Justice. Justice. Zoe and Sienna were the only ones left. They hadn't spoken in days. The weight of the curse and their own guilt had turned them into strangers. But now they were the last two. And the school had made its demands. 6 must pay for 6. Zoe had a theory. It wasn't just revenge. It was a ritual. 6 lives taken. 6 torments reversed. 6 souls offered to the thing beneath the floorboards. The entity Margot had awakened. Or become. They had to find room 304. End it where it began. They armed themselves with what they could find. Rusted scissors from the art room. Flashlights barely working. A journal page from Drew's notebook with the words, "Do not speak its name. Do not close your eyes. It feeds on your denial." They moved through the dark halls, every locker creaking open on its own as they passed. From the walls came whispers, fragments of their own voices, twisted and distorted. Zoe froze when she heard herself laugh. That cruel laugh from sophomore year, when she pulled Margot's chair out in front of the entire cafeteria. The laugh echoed again, then stopped. The chair next to her moved. And Margot's voice whispered in her ear. "Do you still think it was funny?" Room 304 was waiting. The door had rotted through. The scorched wood split like torn flesh. Inside, the circle was back, this time glowing faintly with red light. Symbols danced across the walls, pulsing with unnatural energy. In the center stood Margot, or something wearing her skin. Her face was unchanged, but her eyes were bottomless. Her shadow moved without her. Her voice was many. "You all thought I was weak," she said softly. "But I was chosen." Sienna broke down, sobbing, crawling to her knees. "I'm sorry. Sorry. We were just kids." Margot tilted her head. "No. You were cruel." Zoe stepped forward, shaking. "You don't have to do this." But Margot smiled. Not with joy. With resignation. "I already did." The room groaned. The walls cracked. Flames erupted along the edges of the floor, forming a burning ring around the girls. And from beneath the ground, something rose. Shape. Smoke and bone. Tall, eyeless, mouth split wide enough to scream through time itself. the entity from the East Wing. It wrapped itself around Margot like a cloak. Zoe pulled Sienna back and they ran. Not through the door, but through the hole Blake had once spoken of. The tunnel that led below the school. Into the dark. Where it all began. Beneath Blackridge was no basement. It was a grave. The remains of the Arkmore Institute had been buried under the renovations. Sealed in concrete. Forgotten. But nothing buried stays dead in a place like this. Bones lined the walls. Old dolls. Rusted nails. Charred wood beams. And at the far end, a chamber. 6 makeshift altars. Each with a name carved into the stone. Blake. Drew. Harper. Kenna. Zoe. Kenna screamed. I'm not dead. But a voice from the dark answered back. Not yet. Margot stepped into the chamber. The entity followed, stretching along the ceiling like tar. She raised her hands, and the altars began to burn with blue fire. You laughed, she said. And I wept. You walked away, she said. And I burned. But tonight, she looked at Zoe. You choose. The flames licked higher. The ceiling trembled. The entity grew restless, its many mouths whispering Zoe's name from the shadows. Zoe looked at Sienna, then at Margot, then at the final altar. She stepped forward and placed both hands on the stone. I was cruel, she said. I was a coward. I let it happen. Margot blinked, surprised. Zoe didn't cry. She looked her in the eye. I'm not running anymore. Chamber shook. The flames dimmed. The entity recoiled, confused. Because real remorse was not part of the ritual. And neither was forgiveness. Sienna, without warning, grabbed the rusted scissors and lunged. Not at Zoe. Margot. But the blade stopped inches from her chest, hovering in the air, gripped by invisible force. The entity turned its gaze on Sienna, and pulled. She vanished in smoke. Her altar flared with light. A fifth. Zoe screamed. But Margot only whispered. The school is fed. The seal is closed. For now. The entity vanished into the stone, leaving only ash. Margot stepped backward into the shadows. And was gone. Plug. Blackridge High reopened 3 weeks later. No one talked about what happened. The press called it a gas leak. The Crestwood Six were never mentioned again. Only Zoe remained. She changed her name. Transferred schools. But every night at 3:04 a.m. her phone buzzed. No number. No caller. Just a single line of text. One more must answer. And in the background of every mirror, she swears she sees a girl. In a scorched school uniform. Smiling.